There's a lot of people very afraid. Are we in a stock market crash? What's the future of the economy? Of course, stock markets are still, even though they've corrected, they're still record highs, but we've got this inflation that doesn't seem to be going away. Recently, there was an article dubbed the Great Resignation, that there's an incredible amount of people quitting their jobs. What do you make of this moment in time that we are in?
Well, it's certainly an interesting moment of time. We could say it's unheralded, but my suspicion is that every year I've ever lived has been unheralded. So let's try and take the questions in sequence. I think there is a confidence and a complacency in society. And I think I can explain that because in the period 1982 to today, we've lived through the 40 most benign years in economic history, really a Goldilocks era. We benefited from incredible advances in technology that made capital more efficient. We benefited from globalization, foreign trade, which brought down costs. We benefited demographically from the baby boomers coming of age and becoming producers as opposed to consumers. And we benefited from very, very, very low interest rates and a declining cost of capital for 40 years. You can't imagine a better set of circumstances. And so I think the behavior of investors and taxpayers and everybody else was fairly positive and fairly constructive, which is great. We lived through 40 great years. My suspicion now, however, is that we've entered another period, which will be somewhat less benign. I'm not trying to say, like Doug Casey, that we're entering the Greater Depression. He's better at stuff like that than I am. But I think we're coming into a period where the tailwinds associated with ever lower interest rates is over. You can't take interest rates too far below zero in a real sense for too long, or otherwise people stop saving and there's no supply to lower interest rates from. We're in a period too of economic nationalization where the benefits of global trade are declining. We're entering the period around the Great Resignation and around employment where there are lots of jobs on offer, but the jobs require skill sets that the population doesn't have, or else the jobs have structural payment levels that the workers can't afford to accept. Think for yourself, Jake, what it would be like to support yourself and your family where you are in Utah if you were making $15 an hour or $16 an hour bagging groceries. You wouldn't take that job either because you couldn't support your family. So we have a whole range of circumstances that we have to overcome. And I think that everybody's expectation of the future has to be somewhat less rosy than their expectation in the past. That doesn't mean that there won't be wonderful ways to defend yourself and in fact make money on the volatility that's going to come up. But I suspect that the benign economic climate that people have become used to is going to change and change fairly rapidly.
Yeah, I was just getting my internet set up here at my office that I was just telling you about that I got set up, and the guy that was setting it up asked me, what is one of these costs? And I told him, and he said, no, thanks. I'll rather live in my truck. And I said, are you living in your truck right now? And he said, kind of. I'm working full time and I can't afford anywhere to live here. And where I live it's relatively cheap compared to a lot of places in America. Of course, not the cheapest, but that kind of struck me. And I'm not sure what the answer is to that. I guess I try not to delve in it too much now and trying to be more, ask myself, what would Rick Rule do? Like my bracelet, what would Rick Rule do? No, I'm just joking. But what I've learned a lot from you is really just, there's a lot of things you cannot control in the world, and there's a few things you can. And so if we focus on what we can control right now, where are you putting your energy? You've talked for a while about your belief that looking at the arithmetic, you expect some form of a whether it's a crash, correction, whatever it might be. Is what we've seen recently that, or are you expecting more to come? Are you buying now? Or are you waiting to see if there's further issues in the markets before you enter in fuller force?